Welcome to Resiliency Redefined. I'm your host, Robyne, and I am thrilled to share with you information about resiliency, well-being, performance, education, business, parenting, and everything in between. I'm committed to joining you each week to talk about these big ideas and bring them into action, habits, tools, strategies, tactics that allow us to finally uncover what it takes to truly be well. And I'm just so excited that you're here. So this episode is all about fear. And let me tell you, okay. So this podcast, Resiliency Redefined, today was the day. So as I'm recording this for you, today was the day that the first 8 episodes went live. So I feel like very in touch with fear right now because the process of putting out something new in the world, like a podcast, it's fearful. And I think it's really normal that it's okay to feel a wee bit fearful when we're trying something new. And as I was able to identify in the work on human resiliency, like one of the things that gets in the way of people being able to show up, to do hard things, to take on challenge and risk was the fear. And the fear has so many different faces. It has so many different names. It could be the fear of rejection. It could be the fear of judgment. It could be like the fear of just being evaluated. Like there's so many things that activate this system that's really driven by the ego to try and keep us safe. So I think when we just like to be able to like understand fear and take a deeper dive into fear and like why do we experience it? What does it have to do with resiliency and performance? I think the biggest learning for me when it comes to fear is to recognize that it's a system whose number one job is to keep me safe. It's to keep me alive. So this process of fear, our body's ability to feel fear and to like respond to fear, it's our survival mechanism. Its job is literally for you not to die. It's a really important part of our psychology. Yet so often we view fear as the enemy, this like thing that's holding us back or this thing that's making our lives, so much more difficult than it needs to be. It's like, no. Fear lets you know that like you matter, that you being here and staying safe and sound is so important to our survival. So I encourage you to like redefine and reimagine your relationship with fear. And as soon as we can meet our fear and say, hey, I get it. You don't want me to die. I totally understand. But you know what? You're not going to die if this podcast like burns and it just doesn't fly, right? That's not going to make or break your career, Robyne. It will be a lesson learned, right? Perhaps podcasting ain't your thing, sister. Fine. But when we just let fear go like unattended and like supported and acknowledged, it literally can just feel all consuming, right? It would feel like, oh my gosh, if this podcast isn't picked up or if people don't like it, right? People are going to be mad at me. It's like, well, I really don't think that's going to be the case. But fear is just like, think of all the possibilities. Now, I'll give you an example of like how I'm choosing to talk about fear and imagine my relationship with fear now, which is remarkably different than it was 5 years ago. So yeah, I wrote a chapter about fear because I know it's a barrier to human resiliency. I put that in Calm Within the Storm, that book. But they're two very clear fear stories. Don't worry, it does not involve like snakes and spiders or anything that the average bear might be afraid of. But these are two stories that were so pivotal for me to understand how fear is serving me and how it doesn't serve me. So when Calm Within the Storm first was released, it was during COVID, which is always like a stellar time to release a book, although it was on human resiliency. So I thought that would have been more helpful. It wasn't like on social skills, right? Because we didn't see anybody for 2 years. So I could see a book on social skills not launching, but resiliency, I thought, hey, there's some hope here. But it did do very well. And I was very appreciative of the warm reception that it received. And I remember one very particular moment where I was approached by two media opportunities that wanted to talk about calm. The first one was a very large, like US morning network that you would all recognize, right? It was like a big morning show in the US. And the second opportunity at the same time was a very small CBC AM radio show in Northern Ontario. Okay. I believe it, if I recall correctly, I think it was Sudbury. So it was this like very small AM radio station that was going to just, for a couple minutes, talk a little bit about the book. And when I was asked, okay, which one are you going to pick? Obviously, I picked Sudbury. Obviously, I picked the little radio station interview. Why? Because fear made the decision. I did not want to put myself out there on that international stage. I was like, heck no. I would love to stay small because I can control my surroundings if I just stay small and protect myself and my family and not go out there, because if I put myself out there, people might think that I'm, trying too hard, or maybe they're going to be like, "Oh, I don't like her approach to things," or hey, do you know that she dropped out of high school? Like, hey, did you know she has ADHD? Like, wow, did you know she was like a recovering addict? Like, she's been married a bunch. Like, I could only imagine like what people would have said if like I put myself like out there. So obviously I went with the safe choice. Now, from what I recall, the conversation, the small CBC interview, and again, CBC is no little thing. Like, hi, utmost respect for CBC. They introduced me to Mr. Dressup. So I have mad respect for Casey and Finnegan and Mr. Dressup. Okay, so, and I appreciate CBC has done so much more than just Mr. Dressup, but I'm clearly dating myself. But anyway, I was very proud to do that interview with CBC, and it just felt like the safer choice. When I got like away from that decision, like, a little while later, and I was remember sitting in a room with a publicist being like, okay, how are we going to get some good traction? And they're like, we really got to get you on a US news show in the morning. I just remember having this moment being like, maybe I could have maybe picked something differently that wasn't fueled by fear back then. That might have perhaps served me a wee bit better. But nevertheless, fear taught me a very important lesson that day, that if you leave me, Robyne, unattended, I am going to perhaps not necessarily pick the decision that's going to get you closer to your goals. So, example of fear number one. So, fear does not let to decide what opportunities that I do. Fear doesn't get to decide that I don't get to launch this podcast because you already had, lots of good things. Why are you pushing the boat with something else? Like, why are you trying to rock the boat? I'm not. I just really want to be of service. And again, I have learned so much from other podcasts. I just want to give back some way. And this is something that is in my lane that I can do. Okay. Second fear story that I want to tell you about. And this, my friends, this is going to be a moment where I'm not glazing Hunter. Okay. A glaze is what they refer to as, like, apparently I like to glaze certain people where I'm like, let me tell you about this person. Hunter, though, I tell you, there's something pretty unique about my firstborn. And I recall it was probably, oh gosh, now it would have been about 6 years ago. I came home from my very safe, secure job in a university setting. And like, I could tell you, I got a piece of paper once a year that told me like my retirement date 40 years from now, right? Like, it was like locked in. As far as we think of jobs being secure, I had security, I had pension, I had benefits, I had opportunity for education. Like, there was a lot going for me in this role, and it served such an important role in my life and the lives of my children for over a decade. Okay, so this is by no means me not appreciating and recognize how important that like solid job was for me for a particular season in my life. However, I got to the point where like I was so burned out. I was like, I just had such a hard time showing up in my work because I experienced, full disclosure, a lot of really difficult leadership pieces. Like, I had some really, really unhealthy, dysfunctional bosses that I had to report to at different times. And like, it wasn't the job, it was how the job was being done that was like literally destroying my soul. I was just in constant fear and just like this feeling that despite me being in this unionized environment, like it was just brutal. And I didn't have anything more to give. And I recall that like I had missed a ton of things with my kids growing up with like cross country meets and like school events because like I was just really kind of held to the structure of this like 8:30 to 4:30, which again, there's so much privilege embedded in a stable job. I'm not acknowledging that. And I just felt smothered by my own life. Anyway, I come home one day and I am in a mood. I am just so distraught. I cried my whole way home because I had another, interaction that went to hell in a handbasket and with this one leader. And I came home in tears. And I tried to do my best to like, patch up the blotchy red snotty cry before I went in the house. But anyway, I came in the house and I sat down and I started to make dinner. So I obviously didn't sit down, but I came in the house. Hunter sat down at this point and I started to make dinner. And he's like, "Hey, mom, come sit with me for a second." And I'm like, "Dude, I got to make dinner. We got to get going." He's like, "Mom, just sit with me." I was like, "Okay." And I sat down and he said, "What's wrong?" And I never wanted my kids to know that I was struggling. Obviously, as parents, we want to protect our kids, but I was just like, "Yeah, that dude at work, we just had a really difficult meeting and I'm just feeling pretty discouraged right now." Right? I felt like that was, age appropriate that I could share with my teenager. And Hunter said to me, he goes, "Hey, mom, you told me that when I grow up, I could like essentially be anything that I want to be if I put in the work and had the right attitude." And I'm like, "Yeah, putting in the work and having the right attitude will get you wherever you want to go, I believe, and being kind." And he said, "So I can be anything I want when I grow up if I'm just like put in the right attitude, have the right attitude, put in the work and be kind." I said, "Yes. Why can't you, mom? Oh, why can't you be anything that you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Hunter, I am." And I remember just looking at the little face and I was just like, oh. And he's like, "Mom, like, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I'm like, "Dude, I am a grown up. I'm old." And he's like, "No, no, mom." He's like, what do you want to do with your life?" Like, just imagine I'm literally had this like no good run, horrible day at work. And I came home and have this like heart to heart philosophical conversation with my 14-year-old, right? And I'm just like, shouldn't you be on a video game? Like, can't you go on screens or something? Like, why are we having this heart to heart right now? But he's like, "Mom, what do you want to be?" And I said, "Hunter, I would just love to be able to write and share and be in community and just be of service. Like, I just want to help people. Like, I just want to give back. Gosh, the amount of people who showed up for me and helped me build my comeback, I just want to help other people. That's what I want to do. I want to help other people and I don't want to help them like this anymore because I don't feel like I'm helping anybody in my job right now." And then he's like, "Okay, so what does that take for you to have that future?" And I said, "Well, probably means I have to leave my job." And he said, "Okay." He's like, "Hey, mom, would you do me a favor?" And I'm like, "Hunter, I don't know at this moment. What would you like?" He's like, "Just bet on yourself. Bet on yourself. Just do it." Because he's like, "I am so tired of seeing you so tired. Because mom, you have like," he's like, "Mom, you have all these like gifts and skills and talents. And you tell me all about my gifts and skills and talents." And he's just like, "Use them better than this, mom. Bet on yourself." And I remember walking into the HR department the next morning and I left my post. I resigned. And I realized that like the fear of like not being brave to take a chance on my own career, the fear of what that would do and the example that would set for my kids. No, I wasn't going to give that another day. Now, all of a sudden, again, it was this like TSN turning point. I realized, okay, I am out. I am going to find a way to serve. And again, I have so much privilege. The fact that, my husband has a full-time permanent job, right? Like this isn't lost on me, but I did bet on myself. And I went out into that big world and I thought, okay, I'm going to try and be of service. I want to be an author. I want to be a speaker. I want to maybe be a podcast host. Who knows? How hard could it be, right? And I kid you not, literally within like a few months, the world shut down with COVID. And and it literally was like just when I was going to launch and put myself into the big world, all of a sudden COVID impacted everyone. And I had this moment where I was like, it would have been a lot more predictable if I would have stayed in my post. However, this is the part that I used to be scared about, that like there would be uncertainty, there would be unknowns, like unknowables. But the reality is, as we talked about in earlier episodes, there's no such thing as perfect knowledge. We are not playing chess, my friends. We are playing poker. You play the hand you are dealt. And who knew that those like 10 years of me teaching online would mean that I already knew what Teams was and Zoom was, and I already had a webcam. And all of a sudden, I could bring my work and resiliency into a virtual domain. And within my first COVID season, when I was a full-time entrepreneur, I think I had over 300 keynotes. So fear left unchecked is going to like sign us up for a lot of things that aren't necessarily where we can shine the brightest or we are able to be of service. It's literally just protecting us from the moment, but unfortunately, it's robbing us of our big, bright futures if we let fear make the decisions. So instead of letting our decisions be based on fear, my invitation for you is to like, think of fear as that like part of your ego that's just trying to keep you safe and sound. Bring that ego in as your amigo and say, hey, I see what you're doing. I understand this fear is real and I'm well resourced to come no matter what. I'm well resourced. We're going to figure this out. And we're never meant to figure it out by ourselves. We're in this together. Whew, big feels. Okay, last little tidbit on fear. Why is it at nighttime do like these scariest, darkest, biggest fear filled things happen? My friends, it again is our biology. The reason at nighttime everything feels scarier is very much because our resources are depleted. They are drained. It's when we wake up in the middle of the night with that cortisol spike, all of a sudden we feel fear because our body is in a state of rest. The muscles aren't prepared to fight. Our bodies, we're vulnerable at nighttime. We're so vulnerable just because our bodies are in that place of like healing and growing and restoration. So it's normal that as soon as we wake up and we have a scary thought or a feeling, like we kind of like, wow, I don't like what this feels like. But my gentle invitation for you in this one is this: whatever thoughts or big emotions that kind of pop up after, let's say, 8 p.m., don't trust what you think after 8 p.m. Literally just enjoy that time to watch programming, have conversations. I'm a huge advocate of reading at nighttime. Don't trust anything your body perceives after 8 p.m. because you're not resourced at that time to be able to take on the big worries of the world. Don't trust yourself after 8 p.m. Keep yourself safe and sound. And again, if a scary thought pops up or you wake up in the middle of the night to a scary thought, just be like, whoa, it's not 6 a.m. yet, right? These are these kind of witching hours. I don't worry about what happens physiologically, neurologically in these windows, because they're definitely just like, we're not quite resourced. And the last limitation, if you do wake up, like me often, sometimes at 1 and 3 in the morning, when you have those big thoughts and you're having that cortisol spike, my gentle invitation is just to take a moment and put your hand on your heart, take a deep breath in, that slow exhalation out, and count your blessings. Just count your blessings in that scary window of nighttime, in that darkest part of nighttime, because you can't have a worried heart and a grateful heart at the same time. And again, fear is just trying to keep you safe. It's not meant to hold you back. And as soon as you bring fear beside you and say, I see you and I thank you and I got this, you're going to see that that fear doesn't have as tight of a grip on you as it once did. So to each and every one of you who are listening to Resiliency Redefined, thank you for being here. I also want to just hold space for this really cool lesson I remember learning, that one of the greatest things we can do for each other is to congratulate people when good things happen. Like we're quick to console, which is special, and offer condolences, which is so important in our culture, as is congratulations. So in this moment, I want to say a special thank you to Michelle, to Kelly, to Andrea, and to Marty for being the first people to congratulate me when they heard episode 1. I do hope that there's some other conversations But today, in this moment, those were the first congratulations, Robyne, that came across my device. And I just want to let you all know how much I appreciate that you're here and that I get to do this, and that this hopefully is the beginning of something pretty special. So take good care, and please tune in next time. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. Thank you for spending time with this podcast episode today. I hope you found something helpful in Resiliency Redefined. Please feel free to share it with somebody who you might think could benefit. Maybe there was something useful, something in particular that you think you could pay forward. Also, if you have a moment, please feel free to rate and review this podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcast. It means the world to me. And again, thanks for your time. Thank you for your interest. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.